Here's something that doesn't make any sense when you first think about it. There are people making $30,000 a year who sleep perfectly fine at night, and there are people pulling in $200,000 a year who still check their bank account with one eye closed, terrified of what they might see. Same planet, completely different relationships with money. So if income isn't what stops the anxiety, what does? Is it just a personality thing? Are some people wired to worry and others aren't? Or is there actually a specific number, a real calculable threshold, where the financial stress just stops? I spent a long time thinking this was purely a mindset problem, that the people who stopped worrying had just trained themselves to think differently. But the more I dug into the research, the more I realized something important. The people who genuinely stop worrying about money aren't just thinking differently. They hit a specific number, and then they hit another one. And by the time they crossed the third threshold, the anxiety didn't just reduce, it disappeared entirely. My name is Wayne, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people reach a point where money stops being a source of daily stress, while others keep chasing a finish line that never stops moving. If you want to understand the actual math and psychology behind financial freedom, not the motivational poster version, the real version, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up giving you some clarity. Now, let's talk about why most people never find the answer to this question. The reason is simple. They're asking the wrong question. Most people walk around asking, how do I make more money? And that's not a bad question, but it's the wrong one if your actual goal is to stop worrying. Because here's what actually happens when you make more money without answering the right question first. Your expenses rise to meet your income. Your lifestyle upgrades. Your expectations shift upward. And 6 months after that raise you were so excited about, you're back to the same low-grade financial anxiety you had before, just with a nicer car payment attached to it. Economists call this the hedonic treadmill. Most people just call it their life. This is why you know people who earn twice what you earn and somehow seem just as stressed. It's not because they're bad with money. It's because more income without a framework just means more spending, more obligations, and more things that can go wrong. The anxiety scales with the lifestyle. The right question isn't how do I make more? The right question is how much do I actually need at my current lifestyle to never have to worry about money again? And that question has a real, specific, mathematical answer. 3 answers, actually. There are 3 thresholds. Each one removes a different layer of financial stress. And you need to understand all 3, because stopping at the first one is exactly where most people get stuck. Threshold 1, the emergency floor. This is the number that kills the low-level financial panic, running in the background of your life when you have zero cushion. You know what I'm describing, the quiet dread every time your car makes a noise it didn't make last week. The spike of anxiety when your phone screen cracks. The involuntary mental math that kicks in the moment an unexpected bill shows up in your inbox. That specific flavor of stress has a cure, and it's a smaller number than most people expect. Research from Vanguard found that people with just $2,000 in savings reported financial well-being scores that were 21% higher than people with no savings at all. Not $50,000, not 6 figures, $2,000. That's the threshold that moves your brain out of pure survival mode and into something that at least resembles stability. The full emergency floor, the number that covers the vast majority of financial surprises most people actually face, sits somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000 depending on your cost of living. Car repairs, medical copays, a broken appliance, a month of reduced income. Almost everything that blindsides the average person financially falls inside that range. Once you build that buffer, the background noise turns down. You stop catastrophizing every minor setback because you know in real concrete numbers that you can handle it. That psychological shift is not small. It's the foundation that every other threshold gets built on. But here's what threshold 1 doesn't do. It doesn't free you from needing your paycheck. You're more stable, but you're not free. You still have to show up. You still can't walk away. That's what threshold 2 is for. Threshold 2, runway money. Runway money is the number that gives you genuine options, specifically the option to leave a job, a situation, a city, without your financial life immediately collapsing. And the psychological impact of simply having that option, even if you never exercise it, is something most people underestimate until they experience it firsthand. The uncomfortable truth is that most people aren't trapped in their current circumstances because they love them. They're trapped because they can't afford to leave. They stay in jobs that are quietly grinding them down because they need next month's paycheck. They don't negotiate hard. They don't push back on unreasonable demands. They don't take calculated risks on better opportunities. Because when you have no runway, the cost of getting it wrong is immediate and brutal. Runway money changes that entire equation. The number here is roughly 6 to 12 months of your total living expenses sitting in liquid, accessible savings. Not invested in the market, not locked inside a retirement account, available. For most Americans, that lands somewhere between $20,000 and $60,000, depending on where you live and how you live. When you have that cushion, something remarkable happens to how you carry yourself. You walk into a performance review differently when you know you don't desperately need the outcome to go your way. You negotiate your salary differently when walking away isn't catastrophic. You evaluate opportunities differently when you have the time to be selective rather than desperate. Here's what surprises most people about runway money. You usually don't even need to use it. Just having it changes your behavior, your confidence, and ultimately your outcomes. People with financial runway consistently report better job offers, higher negotiated salaries, and smarter career pivots, not because they're smarter than everyone else, but because they're not operating from fear. And fear, it turns out, is extremely expensive. But threshold 2 still isn't the finish line. Your money is still sitting in cash, not growing. You still need an active income to sustain your lifestyle long term. You haven't crossed into true financial freedom. That requires threshold 3. Threshold 3, your financial independence number. This is the number where your money generates enough money that you no longer need to trade your time for income. Work becomes optional. Not impossible, not irresponsible, optional. You work because you want to, because it's meaningful, because you enjoy it, not because the alternative is losing your home. The formula that unlocks this threshold is called the 4% rule. And if you've never come across it before, this is the most important piece of financial math most people never learn. The 4% rule came out of something called the Trinity Study, a rigorous analysis of decades of stock market and bond performance designed to answer one question: how much can a retiree withdraw from their portfolio each year without running out of money. The conclusion was that withdrawing 4% or less annually gives your portfolio a historically very high survival rate across 30-plus year timeframes, even through market crashes, recessions, and everything in between. Here's why that number matters for you specifically. If you know your annual expenses, your financial independence number is simple math. Take your yearly spending and multiply by 25. That's your target. Spend $30,000 a year. Your FI number is $750,000. Spend $40,000 a year. Your FI number is $1 million. Spend $60,000 a year. Your FI number is $1,500,000. Spend $80,000 a year. Your FI number is $2 million. At these portfolio sizes, a 4% annual withdrawal covers your lifestyle. Your investments keep growing even as you draw from them. Your money is working hard enough that you genuinely don't have to. Now, before you decide that number sounds unreachable and close this video, I want to address the two mistakes people make when they first see this math. Mistake one is thinking nothing changes until you hit the full number. That's wrong. Every dollar you add to your investment portfolio between threshold 2 and threshold 3 is reducing how much you need to earn from work. At $200,000 invested earning 4%, your portfolio generates $8,000 a year. That's a car payment, an insurance bill, a utility stack, all covered by your money, not your labor. You aren't fully free yet, but you're less dependent every single year. The finish line gets closer while you're still running toward it. Mistake 2 is assuming the 4% rule only applies to traditional retirement at age 65. It doesn't. The math doesn't care how old you are. If your portfolio can sustain your withdrawal rate indefinitely, the age you reach, it is irrelevant. Whether that's 40 or 60, the formula works the same way. What determines the timeline isn't your age, it's your savings rate. Now here's the part most financial content skips, because it doesn't fit the clean motivational arc. Some people hit their FI number and still feel anxious. The market has a rough year and drops 20%. Suddenly, that $1 million portfolio is $800,000, and all the old fear comes rushing back. Or they reach the number and immediately start second-guessing the math. What if inflation runs higher than expected? What if expenses jump unexpectedly? What if the 4% rule stops holding? This is real. It happens more than people admit. And it happens because genuine financial freedom isn't a purely mathematical achievement. It's also an identity achievement. If you spent 20 or 30 years operating as someone who worries about money, someone who checks the app, runs the mental math, loses sleep over the balance, that identity doesn't automatically dissolve the moment a portfolio hits a target number. The habit of anxiety runs deeper than the math can reach. The people who actually stop worrying aren't just the ones who hit the number. They're the ones who spent the years building toward it, becoming a fundamentally different kind of person along the way. Someone who understands how money works instead of fearing it. Someone who has made hard, consistent, intentional decisions long enough that they trust themselves to handle whatever comes next. That's the real answer to the question everyone is actually asking. How much do you need to never worry about money again? You need the emergency floor that silences the background panic. You need the runway money that replaces fear with leverage. And you need the FI number that makes your labor optional and your time your own. But underneath all of it, you need the identity shift that happens when you stop reacting to money and start making deliberate choices with it. The number is real. The formula works. But the person you become while building toward it is what actually makes the anxiety stop for good. Start building the floor. Build the runway. Keep going until the math takes over. Your future self isn't just going to have more money. They're going to be a completely different person. And that person doesn't lie awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, running numbers that never seem to add up.